One of these songs almost never got released at all, because the word in the chorus was so explicit the record label made the writers change it days before it dropped. Another one topped the charts for 6 weeks straight.
Rosie, you're alright, you wear my...
Written about a real relationship the singer never should have had. And by the time we get to number 1, you're going to replay a song you've heard 100 times.
Things that you might have done, only the good die young.
And hear it completely differently. So here's the challenge. I'm counting these down from 10 to 1. See how many you actually catch before I tell you. Drop your number in the comments. I want to see who really knows their music history and who's been singing along blind this whole time. And if you're into hidden stories like this one, the ones behind the songs you grew up on, this is exactly what we do here. Hit subscribe to Soulwave Vibes now so you don't miss the next one. Let's start with number 10. Number 10, Love Roller Coaster by Ohio Players. Ohio Players had already built a reputation before Love Roller Coaster ever hit the radio, and it wasn't purely a musical one. Their album covers were as talked about as their sound, known for provocative imagery that pushed further than most funk acts of the era dared. The Honey album, released in 1975, kept that reputation fully intact, featuring cover art built around a woman covered in the album's namesake substance. What was inside the sleeve matched the promise on the front. Love Roller Coaster went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in January of 1976, and on the surface it's a fairly simple concept song, an amusement park ride used as an extended metaphor. The climb, the pause at the top, the sudden drop, the dizzy, breathless aftermath. Every verse leans harder into the metaphor than the last, and the band commits to it completely, layering in vocal performances that track the ride from start to finish. For a huge portion of listeners, especially younger ones dancing to it at school functions, it landed exactly as advertised. A funky, high-energy record about a fun day at the fair. For anyone actually paying attention to where the metaphor was going, the amusement park was doing a lot of narrative heavy lifting for something considerably more intimate. The song also became one of the strangest footnotes in 70s pop culture, thanks to a single audible scream buried in the mix. A rumor began circulating, reportedly first amplified by a California radio DJ and later repeated on a nationally syndicated countdown program, that the scream had been captured live during a real, violent incident in the recording studio. Different versions of the story pointed fingers at different band members over the years. Half a century later, Love Roller Coaster is still a dance floor staple, proof that a great groove can carry a song a lot further than most listeners ever bother to look. Number 9, Rosie, by Jackson Browne.
Rosie, you're alright, you wear...
By 1977, Jackson Browne had already established himself as one of the most literate songwriters of the singer-songwriter movement. Introspective, poetic, emotionally exposed. So when Rosie showed up on his live album Running on Empty, most listeners assumed they were getting more of the same. The album itself was a genuinely unusual project. Instead of a traditional live record captured in a single venue, Browne recorded the entire thing on the road, on tour buses rolling down the highway, in hotel rooms after sound check, backstage in the minutes before a show, and on stage in front of a crowd. That patchwork approach gave every song on the record an unusually intimate, unpolished quality.
When they walked off stage, the drummers swept that
Rosie,
girl.
on its surface, tells a simple story. A sound technician working a show watches the girl he'd been quietly interested in leave the venue with the band's drummer instead. It's a classic setup, a little embarrassing, a little bittersweet, the kind of thing that happens on every tour in history. Then the chorus arrives, and the song quietly pulls the rug out.
When you turn out the light, I got to hand
Rosie, it turns out, isn't the girl at the show at all. It's a nickname the narrator has given to his own hand, and once that detail lands, the entire song reorganizes itself around the joke. The heartbreak wasn't heartbreak, it was a setup for one of the driest, best-delivered punchlines in the entire soft rock catalog. What makes it work is that Browne never winks at the audience.
Rosie.
He sings the whole thing with the same earnest, acoustic sincerity he brings to his most serious material. which is exactly why the reveal lands as hard as it does for listeners who catch it, and sails completely over the heads of listeners who don't. Running on Empty reached number 3 on the Billboard 200 and spent 28 weeks on the charts. Rosie became a fixture of Brown's live shows for years afterward, sung by rooms full of fans, some in on the joke from the first verse, plenty of them figuring it out in real time on the chorus. Number 6, Lady Marmalade by LaBelle. LaBelle released Lady Marmalade in late 1974, and by March of 1975, it had climbed all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Written by Bob Crewe and Kenny Nolan, the song tells the story of a woman working the streets of New Orleans' French Quarter, and its instantly recognizable chorus is a line of French that translates quite directly into an invitation to spend the night together. Here's the detail almost nobody expects. Lead singer Patti LaBelle has said, more than once in later interviews, that she genuinely did not understand what the French lyric meant when the group recorded it. She's described believing at the time that the song was simply about a woman walking down a street, nothing more. The group, by her own account, was young and unguarded enough that the deeper meaning of their own biggest hit passed them by completely, at least until the controversy started catching up with them. And the controversy did catch up. Religious groups raised complaints. Some radio stations refused to touch the record entirely. Others played it in heavy rotation without a second thought. The combination of untranslated French lyrics, a driving funk and soul arrangement, and one of the most powerful vocal performances of the decade let a huge share of the listening public experience the song as pure spectacle, theater, not narrative, without ever engaging with what it was actually describing. Patti LaBelle has gone on to perform Lady Marmalade thousands of times since, fully aware by now of exactly what she's singing. But at the moment the tape was rolling on one of the most successful singles of her career, she was, by her own admission, the last person in the room who understood it. Number 5, Afternoon Delight by Starland Vocal Band.
And we know the night is always gonna be here.
Starland Vocal Band hit number 1 with Afternoon Delight in July of 1976, and the record went on to win 2 Grammy Awards, Best New Artist and Best Arrangement for Voices. A genuinely rare double honor for a group whose commercial momentum would collapse almost immediately afterward, leaving this song as the thing they'd be remembered for. Full stop. The song is built on lush 4-part vocal harmony and a gentle, unhurried pop melody, describing 2 people sneaking away from work in the middle of the day for a private encounter at home. It is, without much competition, one of the most cheerful-sounding songs ever built around a midday tryst to top the American charts. Songwriter Bill Danoff has explained in interviews that he set out deliberately to avoid writing anything overtly explicit. He wanted something playful, warm, and suggestive. A song where the double meaning would be obvious in hindsight, but invisible on a first casual listen. By his own account, he succeeded almost too well. The title alone fuses a specific time of day with a word for pleasure, and every image that follows, the anticipation of getting home, the lighting of a spark, the language of warmth and satisfaction, points in the same direction without a single line stating it outright. The song found an unexpected second act in 2004, when the comedy film Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, featured an extended a cappella rendition performed by its cast in one of the film's most quoted scenes. That scene introduced the song to a whole new generation of viewers, plenty of whom then went looking up the original 1976 recording and discovered, decades late, exactly what they'd been missing. The original version, for what it's worth, hasn't changed a single note. It sounds exactly as warm and innocent today as it did the day it hit number 1. Number 4, My Sharona by The Knack. The Knack released My Sharona in June of 1979, and the song's rise was less a hit than a genuine phenomenon. It shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 6 straight weeks, the longest run at the top of any single that entire year, and drove the band's debut album, Get the Knack, to sell more than 5 million copies almost overnight. For a brief moment, The Knack looked like the biggest new band in America. What most of those 5 million buyers didn't know was exactly who, and what, the song was actually about. Lead singer Doug Fieger wrote it about a real person. Sharona Alperin, his girlfriend at the time, whom he'd met in 1978. She was 17, he was 25. The lyrics express an overwhelming, almost breathless physical fixation, dressed up inside one of the most relentlessly catchy hooks of the entire decade. The kind of song that gets stuck in your head for a week, whether you want it there or not. That catchiness did a lot of the heavy lifting in keeping the song's actual subject matter from getting a second thought on daytime radio. Fieger and Alperin dated for 4 years before eventually going their separate ways. She went on to build a genuinely successful career as a real estate agent in Los Angeles, becoming known in industry circles for selling homes to celebrity clients. A life entirely her own, permanently attached in the public record to the song that made her famous before she ever chose that spotlight. Nearly half a century later, My Sharona remains a radio and karaoke staple. Still exactly as catchy, and still carrying exactly the same story most people never bothered to ask about. Number 3, Love to Love You Baby by Donna Summer. Donna Summer recorded Love to Love You Baby in 1975 in Munich, and the story of how it came together is one of the most unusual in the entire history of disco. Producers Giorgio Moroder and Pete Bellotte had Summer perform the vocal take completely alone, in a studio with the lights turned off, specifically to help her feel less self-conscious in front of the microphone. What she delivered instead became one of the most talked about vocal performances of the decade, a track that simulates intimacy from beginning to end, through breathy, rhythmic vocal phrasing stretched across nearly the entire runtime. The original album cut ran almost 17 minutes. The single edit released to radio was considerably shorter. But the intent behind it never changed. The story goes that a record label executive played the full-length version at a party he was hosting, and the response in the room was so immediate and so enthusiastic that he called the production team the next day and asked, simply, for more of it, which is how the sprawling 16-minute album cut came to exist in the first place. Time magazine famously described the full-length version in blunt, unmistakable terms. The BBC refused to air it entirely, calling it too explicit for broadcast under any circumstances. But in the United States, most stations only ever touched the short single edit, and largely left the actual content of what they were airing unexamined. That edit still reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and helped establish Summer, almost overnight, as one of the defining voices of an entire genre. Parents who heard the radio-friendly cut and found it perfectly inoffensive would have had a dramatically different reaction to the full 17-minute album version, but the overwhelming majority of them never encountered it at all. Number 2, Voulez-Vous by ABBA. ABBA released Voulez-Vous in April of 1979, and it became a massive international hit, topping charts across multiple countries and reaching the American Hot 100 as well. By this point in their career, the Swedish supergroup had built an entire global brand on flawless pop construction, glossy production, and lyrics that often carried real emotional weight underneath a glittering, radio-friendly surface. Voulez-Vous did something just slightly different with that formula. The title itself is a French phrase, and the full line, appearing in the bridge, sung in French right alongside the surrounding English lyrics, asks, quite directly, whether the listener wants to spend the night together. Across the United States and Britain, the overwhelming majority of listeners either didn't speak enough French to catch the translation, or never bothered connecting the phrase to what it literally meant. It simply sounded like a driving, moody, high-energy dance track, and that's exactly how it was received on dance floors around the world. The phrase itself wasn't unfamiliar territory in pop music by 1979. It had already appeared 5 years earlier in LaBelle's Lady Marmalade, as covered earlier in this list. But wrapped in ABBA's carefully cultivated, family-friendly public image, delivered through driving disco production, and the combined vocal power of Agnetha Faltskog and Annie Frid Lyngstad, the line slipped past almost every radio audience's radar entirely. A song asking its listeners, in perfectly ordinary French, whether they wanted to go home together, was absorbed by millions as nothing more than a fun night out at the club. Proof that reputation alone can shape how an entire audience hears a lyric. Number 1, Le Freak by Chic.
to be hacked by everyone.
Chic released Le Freak in September of 1978, and it went on to become one of the best-selling singles in the entire history of Atlantic Records. 6 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, certified 4 times platinum, and still, to this day, one of the defining recordings of the entire disco era. What most listeners never knew for years afterward was exactly how the song came to exist.
Come on along and have a real good time.
And what it very nearly said instead. Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards, the two architects behind Chic, wrote the song in a state of genuine fury after being turned away at the door of Studio 54 on New Year's Eve of 1977, despite having a personal invitation from Grace Jones, who was performing inside that very night. The doorman simply didn't recognize either of them and refused entry regardless. Rather than let it go, Rodgers and Edwards went straight back to Rodgers' apartment, picked up their instruments, and by Rodgers' own account, played straight through the night, well past midnight, channeling their frustration and wounded pride directly into a new song. The chorus that came out of that session originally contained a very different, considerably sharper word than the one the world eventually heard, a word aimed squarely at Studio 54 and everyone inside it. When Atlantic Records heard the demo, they requested a rewrite before the song could be released. Rodgers and Edwards agreed, swapping in the word freak and, in the process, completely reversing the song's meaning, transforming it from a bitter rejection of an exclusive club into an open invitation onto the dance floor for absolutely everyone. That single word swap turned out to be one of the most commercially consequential decisions in the history of popular music. 50 years of radio play between them. Grammy wins, #1 records, songs still played at every wedding reception and every classic rock station in the country, and most of the people who've sung along 1,000 times still have no idea what they were actually singing. That's what made this era of songwriting so remarkable. Nobody needed to spell anything out. The best writers of the 70s hid their boldest ideas in plain sight, wrapped inside a groove too good to question. If any of these caught you completely off guard, tell me which one in the comments below. I read every single one, and I promise there's always somebody surprised by a different entry than you were. If you loved this deep dive, you'll want to check out our video on the R&B and soul records that got banned from the radio entirely, right after this one. And if you want more hidden stories from the decade that hid more than anyone ever realized, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.